Ethan Voss took a moment to steady his breathing as he stepped off the sleek shuttlecraft, its engines still humming in the lavender-tinged twilight. He squinted against the pale light streaming through the towering canopy of ancient trees that lined the spaceport, their leaves casting deep purple shadows along the path. Despite the hush that pervaded the early evening air, a low undercurrent of unfamiliar humming insects and the distant call of alien birds betrayed the bustling life hidden beyond the port's walls. In his 26 years, Ethan had never seen a place quite like Varia Prime, whose twin suns cast a perpetual twilight that challenged his every sense of time. 2 weeks had already passed since his arrival, yet his internal clock still rebelled against the planet's serene but disorienting schedule. Gently adjusting the collar of his uniform, he tried to shake off the subtle sense of dislocation. This world was unlike any he had visited in his short but impressive career as a cybernetics engineer, and his excitement mingled with a twinge of anxiety. He'd been summoned at the behest of the Celestial Science Academy, one of the most renowned institutions in the Varian system, celebrated for its groundbreaking research in bioengineering and advanced regenerative medicine. It was rumored they were on the brink of a medical revolution, one that could transform the future of interspecies cooperation throughout the galaxy. Ethan made his way through the winding corridors toward the heart of the Academy complex, where armed Varian guards stood tall and vigilant. Each guard wore a form-fitting uniform with intricate patterns that shimmered under the planet's pale suns, and their angular features bore the signature high cheekbones and faintly luminescent eyes of their race. It was more than just decoration. He had read about the Varian gift for subtle telepathic observation. Though not strong enough to read minds fully, they could sense intent and heightened emotional states. His assignment here remained both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. Humans rarely found acceptance within the inner sanctum of Varian society, a place guarded by centuries of tradition. Yet, his particular expertise in human Varian cybernetics and cellular regeneration had made him something of a curiosity, opening doors normally locked. That same reputation, however, painted a target on his back. Varian leadership was known to be fiercely protective of their secrets, and any outsider who gleaned too much might eventually be shown the door, or a less merciful exit. As he approached the final security checkpoint, he spotted a tall figure in dark attire waiting under an archway formed by giant vines. The figure was Commander Joran Vex, his posture rigid, his emerald eyes studying Ethan's approach. The commander's silhouette exuded authority, and his narrow gaze carried faint disapproval. Rumor had it he was as strict as any Varian officer could be, dedicated to upholding every facet of their society's laws. "You are late," Commander Vex intoned, voice a low rumble that seemed to reverberate in the stillness. Ethan glanced at his wrist chronometer. By all human standards, he was perfectly on time, but it was obvious the Varian concept of punctuality differed. "Apologies, Commander," Ethan said, inclining his head slightly, still adjusting to the local hours. A barely perceptible quirk of the commander's mouth indicated his skepticism. "Follow me. Your presence has been requested immediately." Without another word, Vex turned on his heel and led Ethan through a series of hallways lit by orbs of soft, glowing energy. The floors were polished to a mirror sheen, reflecting the overhead lights in muted hues of mauve and gold. Gradually, the corridors widened, revealing a massive central atrium brimming with scholars, scientists, and robed dignitaries. Each individual bustled with the kind of purposeful urgency that denoted imminent discovery or crisis. At last, they reached a gated corridor where 2 more guards stood at attention. Commander Vex offered them a curt nod, and the metallic gates slid open. Beyond the threshold lay the interior domain of the Celestial Science Academy's top research division. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. This was where he was expected to make his mark, to use his knowledge of advanced cybernetics in ways that could bridge the gap between Earthlings and the Variants. They passed through 2 more sealed doors, each requiring a palm print from Vex. The final chamber was spacious, a vast laboratory with sleek terminals, banks of blinking monitors, and an array of research pods aligned in perfect intervals. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic chemicals mixed with the sweet perfume of Varian flora, a testament to how seamlessly they integrated their environment into scientific pursuits. Vex stopped at the center of the lab, and inclined his head toward a figure bent over a glowing console. "Lady Seris Vael will see you now, Mr. Voss," he said quietly. "She is third in line to her family's seat, and she bears the official authority of the High Council. See that you do not waste her time." Though spoken softly, the warning in his words was clear. Vex pivoted and left without waiting for a response. Alone, Ethan took a step closer, eyes drawn to the elegant woman at the console. Lady Seris Vael wore a fitted white lab garment trimmed with delicate filigree. Every movement was poised, every gesture exact. Dark hair flowed down to her shoulders, and though her features were just as angular as every Varian he had seen, something in her luminous gaze radiated an inner strength, and perhaps a trace of curiosity. She lifted her head, and for a fraction of a second, Ethan saw a flicker of something akin to disapproval in her eyes. Then her lips pursed in polite greeting. "Mr. Voss, I presume," she said, her voice cultured and cool, like a crisp evening breeze. Ethan bowed his head. "At your service, Lady Vael. I hope my arrival was not inconvenient." "You are precisely on time," she replied, a subtle contradiction to Vex's earlier jab. "Which is fortunate. Our research cannot afford further delays. If your reputation is well earned, we have much work to accomplish together." Her tone was measured, her posture impeccable. There was no warmth in her gaze, only a distant curiosity that reminded Ethan he was, first and foremost, an outsider here. Yet a faint flutter of anticipation stirred within him. He had come all this way to collaborate on the next frontier of regenerative medicine. The chance to work side by side with the Varian elite was too extraordinary to be overshadowed by frigid formality. Nodding, he stepped into the brilliant glow of the console. Outside, beyond the lab's panoramic windows, the twin suns of Varia Prime dipped in the horizon, painting the sky in exotic shades of violet. A small part of Ethan wondered just how different life would soon become, and if he could handle the tide of unforeseen consequences that inevitably accompanied progress in such a rigid society. Lady Seris Vael guided Ethan through the labyrinthine passages of the research facility, each lab more advanced than the last. The hum of power couplings, the flicker of genetic data streaming across glass screens, and the hushed chatter of scientists filled the air with quiet intensity. It became clear that the Academy spared no expense in pursuit of scientific supremacy. As they walked, Seris offered clipped explanations of various ongoing experiments: cellular bridging for burn victims, advanced bone regeneration, and neurological recalibration for degenerative diseases. Each subject seemed more fascinating than the last. Though she remained outwardly calm, her keen eyes betrayed a personal investment in every detail. Near the end of the corridor, they paused before an impressive set of doors. They slid open with a gentle hiss, revealing a circular chamber lined with rows of gleaming capsules. Each capsule pulsated with a ghostly blue glow, reminiscent of living things caught in stasis. At the center stood a solitary workstation, its curved interface reminiscent of an artist's easel. "This is where we will focus our efforts, Mr. Voss," Seris said quietly, motioning to the capsules. "Behold the Varian Apex regenerative systems, prototypes designed for healing catastrophic injuries across species. But we have a problem." She moved to the workstation, gesturing for Ethan to join her. The moment he approached, translucent panels flickered to life, displaying complex biological data. He recognized human chromosomes interlaced with Varian genomic sequences, lines of code that shimmered in vibrant colors. His mind raced as he absorbed the magnitude of what they were attempting. "The problem," Seris continued, "lies in bridging the immunological chasm between our DNA and human DNA. We have stabilized the environment to a certain degree, yet the integration remains incomplete. The body rejects the grafts after a limited period." Ethan nodded, stepping closer to examine the data. "I see. So your approach uses a variable fusion therapy, but the immunosuppressants still fail if the subject's white cell analog spikes above a certain threshold." She arched an eyebrow. "Precisely. You understand quicker than many of our own scientists." He offered a slight smile. "This was a subject of intense study on Earth, though we lacked the necessary tools and resources to take it this far. You have effectively bent biology itself to your will. I'm impressed." A faint glimmer of pride flickered in her eyes, quickly replaced by her usual decorum. "Impressions aside, We must solve the rejection problem, she stated, turning away. Commander Vex told me you are known for your unorthodox methods. I caution you that our resources are not limitless, nor do we indulge wild experimentation. Ethan felt the barest prickle of annoyance at the insinuation. Understood, he said, holding back a pointed remark. But sometimes new solutions demand a certain level of risk. I will follow the guidelines you set, of course. For the next few hours, they pored over countless data sets, discussing everything from protein engineering to nanotechnological scaffolds. Each conversation revealed facets of Seris's brilliance and her disciplined mind. She was relentless in her pursuit of excellence. Yet there was an unmistakable burden in her gaze, an imperceptible weight that caused her to hesitate when asked about broader applications or theoretical expansions of the technology. When their discussion concluded, Seris guided Ethan to his assigned quarters deep within the facility. On the way, the silence between them was punctuated by distant mechanical hums and the distant drip of hydroponic systems. The winding hallways seemed to mirror her guarded demeanor, elegant yet unyielding. Finally, they reached a door marked with an intricate glyph denoting foreign personnel quarters. She paused, turning to face him. We start early tomorrow. I suggest you rest well, Mr. Voss. The days ahead will be long, and your success or failure here may well influence the Council's view of humanity. Ethan nodded, shifting the small satchel on his shoulder. I appreciate the advice, Lady Vael. Good night. Her lips tightened slightly, neither a smile nor a scowl, as she retreated into the dim corridor. The door slid shut, and he was left to acquaint himself with the minimalistic Varian living space. It consisted of a low bed, a translucent desk, and a single window revealing an otherworldly night sky. He released a long breath, processing the day's events. Seris Vael was a puzzle, cold on the surface yet undeniably compelling. For all her talk of caution, Ethan suspected she had hidden depths she guarded closely. Before lying down, he gazed out into the endless purple night, where faint twinkling stars mingled with the towering forms of the native flora. Could he really bridge not just the genetic gap, but the cultural chasm between humans and Varians? And what would become of Seris in the process? The hush of the alien evening provided no answers, but he felt certain this mission would shape his destiny in unforeseen ways. Days merged into a blur of research and trial runs. The hum of incubators, the glow of scanning devices, and the constant swirl of scientific data became Ethan's world. Despite Seris's initially aloof demeanor, he noticed subtle shifts in her attitude. When they conferred on complicated gene editing sequences, she listened with genuine curiosity, occasionally offering the faintest nod of appreciation. At times, she would grace him with the ghost of a smile when he suggested a more creative approach. Though her stoicism rarely wavered, Ethan's sense of camaraderie grew. He learned she was the third child of the Vael family, an ancient Varian noble line with deep roots in their civilization's governance. Her uncle, Lord Talvex, served as head of the High Council, and the Vaels were known for producing formidable leaders in both politics and science. One afternoon, Seris surprised him by speaking about her youth. She admitted she had once been fascinated by Earth's diverse ecosystems, particularly the oceanic life forms. Your planet's marine biodiversity is extraordinary, she mused. We study it for its regenerative processes. A starfish's ability to regrow lost limbs, for instance, most intriguing. He leaned back from the console, a grin forming on his face. So you're telling me you were once something of an Earth enthusiast? She stiffened slightly. Enthusiast is too strong a word. Let's say I respected Earth's capacity for adaptation and survival. Then we have something in common, he quipped. I came here for the same reason, adaptation, bridging frontiers. She didn't return the grin, but didn't reprimand him either. It was in such quiet moments of conversation that Ethan felt a growing respect for Seris. Beneath her meticulously cultivated control, she held a keen sense of wonder she refused to voice too freely. The weeks wore on, and together they made slow but steady progress on the regenerative technology. After thorough testing on inert samples, they reached a milestone, a synthetic compound designed to temporarily shield the human cell structure from Varian immunoresponses. This bridge serum, as they called it, opened new avenues for stable grafting. To celebrate, Ethan jokingly proposed a small toast. Seris regarded him with mild confusion as he produced 2 tiny vials of a sweet but harmless nutrient tonic used by human scientists for quick energy. I promise you, it's not some grand earth tradition, he said, chuckling. Just a small gesture to mark the moment. Hesitating, she eyed the tinted liquid. As you wish, she said, lifting the vial gingerly to her lips. They both downed the beverage, and for a flicker of an instant, it felt almost convivial. She cleared her throat. We should finalize the data and prepare for further tests. Yet the tranquil sense of achievement was short-lived. That same evening, as Ethan locked away the day's lab work, he received a cryptic message from HFY Vael, Seris's younger sister. She asked him to meet her in one of the Academy's lesser-used atriums, claiming it was urgent. Suspicious but curious, Ethan complied. He found Kale waiting in the shadows. She had a resemblance to Seris, tall, with a regal bearing, but her hair was cropped shorter, and her expression was more openly rebellious. Instead of the pristine lab robes, she wore a practical outfit made for stealth. "You're Ethan Voss?" she whispered, glancing over her shoulder to ensure they were alone. "Yes," he whispered back. "Why the secrecy?" Her eyes gleamed with intensity. "I've been watching your work with my sister. She seems less rigid than usual. It's made me think, perhaps you're trustworthy. We must speak of something that concerns Seris." Ethan's pulse quickened. "What about her?" "There are rumors the High Council wants her research to succeed at any cost. But they are also wary of the emotional attachments that might arise from working closely with a human. Our family has been subjected to centuries of genetic modifications to suppress intense emotional display. Seris, especially, was engineered to become the ideal scientist. But I've seen subtle changes in her. If you want to protect her, be cautious." "I appreciate your concern," Ethan said slowly. "But Seris is a grown woman, capable of making her own decisions. I'm just here to assist with the project." Kale frowned. "You don't understand the forces at play. Our society stands on centuries of tradition, and the slightest deviation can have dire consequences for a noble like Seris. There is a procedure known as purification. If the council judges that she's compromised by emotion, they may force her through it." Ethan's stomach twisted. "That sounds extreme. But how does this concern me?" "Because you, Ethan, are the catalyst. They fear your presence could awaken uncharted feelings in her. Our family's carefully engineered emotional restraint might unravel, and if that happens, the council will act swiftly to preserve what they consider purity. I need you to tread carefully, or she could be in danger." She pressed a small data chip into his hand. "This file contains historical records about our society's emotional engineering. Take it, study it, but do not let the council know. If you truly mean to help Seris, you'll need this knowledge." With that, Kale dissolved into the shadows, leaving Ethan clutching the data chip, heart pounding with a new, unsettling reality. The Varian genius for scientific advancement came at a steep price, centuries of suppressed emotion. If Seris was indeed changing, if she was awakening to feelings her society deemed forbidden, would that put her at grave risk? He could only promise himself he wouldn't stand by idly if her safety was threatened. The next morning, the lab was abuzz with an unsettling tension. Seris arrived slightly late, her eyes faintly shadowed, her composure more guarded than usual. They worked in careful silence, neither acknowledging nor dismissing the subtle shift in the air. Around midday, Ethan reviewed the bench of experimental compounds, ensuring everything was labeled correctly, when he noticed something peculiar. A small vial glimmering with an odd coloration he didn't recall. It was labeled Human Growth Elixir, Prototype, an older test formula he'd been refining as a side project. It was nowhere near ready for practical use, as it amplified certain human cellular growth factors to accelerate healing. No one was supposed to consume it, not in its raw form. He felt a chill. The day before, he had rummaged around to find the nutrient tonic for the celebratory toast. Could he have accidentally grabbed the wrong vial? Or had Seris done so? A horrifying thought struck him. What if Seris had consumed the untested growth elixir by mistake? Mind racing, he looked over at Seris. She stood at her station, her expression taut, a bead of perspiration trailing down her temple. Her posture was rigid, as though fighting against some invisible surge within her body. Suddenly, she swayed, gripping the edge of the console. Alarmed, Ethan rushed to her side. "Lady Vael, "Are you all right?" he asked urgently. She tried to speak, but her breath hitched, as though an overwhelming sensation coursed through her. He guided her to a nearby chair, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated in panic. "I feel strange," she managed, voice trembling in an uncharacteristic display of vulnerability. The lab staff glanced over, concern etched on their faces. Before they could react, Seris doubled over, a sharp gasp escaping her lips. Ethan searched for the medkit, his mind whirling. If indeed she had ingested the prototype, the ramifications were unpredictable. The formula was designed to accelerate certain growth factors in humans. What would it do to a Varian physiology already subjected to genetic engineering? Within minutes, a medical team arrived, sedating her to prevent further strain. Ethan could only watch, horror and guilt warring within him, as they carried Seris away on a gurney. He prayed that this was not the catastrophic event Kale had hinted at. Still, dread gnawed at him. If Seris survived, would she remain the same scientist he had come to admire? Or would the unstoppable tide of newly awakened emotions spiral out of control? The ensuing days were a haze of worry and hushed speculation. Word spread rapidly that Lady Seris Vael had been hospitalized due to an unknown reaction. Some whispered about sabotage, others about foreign contaminants introduced by the human scientist. Anxiety rippled through the academy's corridors, and even the guards seemed extra vigilant. Ethan's repeated requests to see Seris were met with silence or dismissive remarks from Commander Vex. When Kale finally intercepted Ethan late one evening, her face bore the marks of stress. "Seris's condition is complicated," she confided, keeping her voice low. "The High Council demanded top secrecy. They fear any sign of weakness in a high-ranking noble might spark political turmoil." "I need to see her," Ethan insisted. "I might know how to help." Kale hesitated. "She's conscious, but changed. I managed to convince the physicians to let me handle her immediate care. If you come tonight, do so in stealth." Beneath the cover of darkness, Kale guided him to a restricted wing of the Academy's medical annex. The halls were deserted, lit only by faint overhead orbs casting pale pools of light on the polished floors. They slipped past a dozing guard to reach Seris's private suite, the door sealed by biometric security. Kale keyed in a code, and the lock hissed open. The room was filled with softly glowing medical equipment. Monitors beeped gently, displaying Seris's vital signs, which appeared alarmingly erratic. The lights were dimmed, enough that Ethan could see her resting in a specialized regeneration pod, a shimmering canopy suspended above her. As they approached, she opened her eyes, revealing an intense luminescence that hadn't been there before. "You came," she breathed, her voice sounding stronger than expected, tinged with surprise. "Of course," he said, swallowing hard. "How do you feel?" She tried to sit up, cheeks flushed a deeper hue than any Varian he'd seen. The growth elixir, it seemed, had already affected her physical form. Her limbs looked more robust, her posture more pronounced, and though still elegant, her frame had taken on subtly accentuated curves. Even her features were softer, more emotive. A faint pink tinted her previously pale complexion, and her hair, once lustrous dark, now caught the room's light in a brilliant sheen. "It's overwhelming," Seris murmured, running a hand through her hair. "Every sensation feels amplified. I can't shut out my emotions like before. It's as though the mental barriers I'd relied on are crumbling." Ethan placed a reassuring hand near her arm, hesitating to touch her uninvited. "I'm so sorry, Seris. The elixir was never meant for Varian consumption. It was a flawed prototype that." Her gaze flicked over to meet his, and he felt the weight of her turmoil. "I know it was an accident," she whispered, "but the changes are real. My body, it's responding in ways no one can fully predict." Kale hovered beside them, her brow creased. "The High Council has demanded that Seris undergo a purification procedure to remove any lingering influence of these new emotional surges. They fear what these changes might mean for her loyalties." Seris's eyes flared with alarm. "They want to strip me of what I'm feeling. I have discovered something unexpected in these emotions, a richness I was never allowed. Now they threaten to take it away." Ethan's heart wrenched. He recognized in her expression the raw vulnerability of someone tasting forbidden freedom. "We can fight this," he said softly. "They can't just enforce a procedure without your consent." Kale and Seris exchanged a wary glance. You don't know the council, Kale said. They have the authority to deem Seris mentally compromised. If that happens, her consent becomes irrelevant. Seris closed her eyes, a brief shudder passing through her. I won't let them do it. I can't go back to being empty. Moved by her plight, Ethan brushed a comforting hand along her forearm. She seemed startled by the contact, but didn't pull away. I'll do whatever I can to help, he vowed, voice low. If it means presenting evidence that these changes pose no threat, or that you have the right to choose your own path, I'll stand with you. A tear glistened in her eye, capturing the sterile light of the medical instruments. It was a small droplet, but for a Varian of noble blood, it spoke volumes. I don't wish to lose what I've found, Ethan, even if it scares me. He gently wiped the tear away, trying to ignore the pounding of his own heart. The last time he touched her skin, she had been cold and distant. Now, her warmth was tangible, laced with a soft trembling as though her heightened senses surged through her. She released a shaky breath, and he felt a tingle rush through his fingertips, as if their contact had sparked a faint current. The first step, Kale said, crossing her arms, is to keep her safe from the council. We'll need a plan to buy time, gather proof, and show that these changes could be beneficial, not detrimental. Seris sank back against the pod's cushion. It's a monumental risk. The council has the power to brand us all traitors. But I trust you both. Ethan's heart thudded in his chest. Over the weeks, he had come to admire Seris for her intelligence and tenacity, never imagining she would one day look at him with such open vulnerability. He gave her hand a supportive squeeze. We will find a way. Your life and your choices are worth defending. In the ensuing quiet, Kale gently led Ethan back to the hallway. You must go, she whispered. Commander Vex roams these corridors at night. I'll secure Seris's room until we can enact a plan. Standing at the threshold, Ethan caught one last glimpse of Seris's newly radiant figure, her eyes filled with a tumult of emotion. In that moment, the truth of Kale's warnings hit him. They were up against a centuries-old institution that believed in engineered stoicism, in rigidly controlling the emotional spectrum of its aristocracy. The repercussions of Seris's transformation would shake the foundations of Varia Prime, if not the entire Varian civilization. As he slipped into the darkened corridor, Ethan only hoped they could navigate the storm gathering on the horizon before it tore them, and everything they had worked for, to pieces. 2 nights later, Ethan was roused from restless sleep by a coded transmission on his wrist communicator. Kale's urgent tone crackled through the device. Meet me in the sublevel archives. We found something that could change everything. He dressed quickly, quietly, so as not to arouse suspicion in the dormitory wing. The sublevel archives were said to store centuries of Varian knowledge, from ancient cultural rites to detailed genetic modification records. Access was highly restricted, but Kale had evidently found a way. The air in the deserted corridor smelled faintly of damp metal, and the luminous wall sconces glowed at half-intensity. He slipped through the hush, only the echo of his footsteps accompanying him. Finally, he reached a sealed doorway that read, Archives, authorized personnel only. It slid open to reveal Kale waiting inside, arms crossed, her expression tense. Thank you for coming, she said. We don't have much time. Leading him to a recessed alcove, Kale tapped a holographic console. A swirl of ancient Varian script appeared, lines of text that glowed turquoise. At first glance, it was incomprehensible to Ethan, but Kale pressed a few more keys, and an auto-translation kicked in. These are the genealogical records of our nobility going back 8 centuries, she explained. This is the bedrock of our civilization, the proofs of lineage that determine one's station. But hidden in these records is evidence that the Vael family, and others, agreed to a secret genetic engineering program. This program systematically suppressed key emotional receptors in the Varian brain, allowing them to maintain composure and logic at all costs. It made them perfect leaders, unwavering, dispassionate. Over time, it became tradition, revered as a sacred aspect of Varian nobility. She scrolled down, revealing lines of data that documented repeated gene modifications. Ethan drew closer, scanning the text. So your emotional restraint is not just cultural, it's actively engineered. Kale nodded grimly. Precisely. The Varian aristocracy has used this to control the masses for centuries. The High Council upholds it as a virtue, an unassailable pillar of Varian identity. Anyone who deviates is seen as unstable or inferior. So if Seris is experiencing real emotions now, that threatens the entire system, Ethan reasoned, feeling a chill creep down his spine. They might see it as a corruption of their lineage. That's exactly why Lord Talvex is pushing for purification. If they erase her awakened emotions, they can keep the status quo. If she refuses, they might brand her a heretic, or worse. Ethan exhaled sharply. We need to make this public. If ordinary Varians knew the truth, that their noble leadership was designed to suppress emotions, wouldn't that cause an uproar? Kale pressed her lips together. It would, but the Council controls most channels of information. We'd need a powerful moment to reveal this, a stage so public that not even the Council could suppress it. Ethan's mind raced. We'd have to do it during a High Council session, or at least in the presence of enough influential figures that the truth becomes undeniable. Kale's eyes sparkled with daring. There's an upcoming congregation, a formal hearing on Seris's condition. If we could present evidence there, in front of the Council, we might force them to allow personal choice in matters of emotional expression. Ethan nodded, the weight of the plan sinking in. That means we have to keep Seris safe and well enough to speak for herself. The Council can't just brand her delirious if she stands before them coherent and with undeniable proof. Kale looked resolute. Exactly. But time is short. The hearing is in 3 days, and rumors are swirling that Commander Vex has been instructed to forcibly extract Seris for the purification. A crackle from Ethan's wrist communicator startled them both, followed by a voice. Ethan Voss, your presence is requested at once in the main laboratory. Commander Vex will escort you. Their eyes met, panic flashing. Stall them, Kale hissed. Hide the archives. You never saw me here. Within seconds, she vanished into the shadows between towering shelves. Ethan quickly exited the console, wiping the search history, and hurried toward the lab. His heart pounded with an urgency that threatened to rattle his composure. He sensed the storm was breaking, and their precious window to save Seris was fast closing. When he reached the main lab, he found Commander Vex waiting with a stern expression. You are needed in Lady Seris Vael's suite, the commander said tersely. She has requested to see you. However, your time will be restricted, as the Council believes your presence might be influencing her condition. Ethan forced a neutral expression. If Lady Vael has asked for me, I must comply. Lead the way. Without another word, Vex turned on his heel. Ethan followed, a million thoughts whirling in his mind. With each step, he reminded himself that he was not just a scientist now. He was an unwitting participant in an unfolding rebellion against the highest echelons of Varian power. If he failed, Seris would lose the freedom she had so recently discovered, and a millennia-old system of emotional subjugation would continue unchallenged. Commander Vex's posture bristled with tension as they arrived at Seris's suite. The commander halted at the door, turning sharply to face Ethan. I will wait outside. You have 10 minutes. Should you attempt anything untoward, remember that the Council's patience is thin. Ethan swallowed and nodded curtly. As the door slid open, he stepped inside to find Seris out of the regeneration pod, walking gingerly across the room. She wore a loose-fitting robe that did little to conceal the more pronounced curves the elixir had granted her. Even her posture, once carefully controlled, seemed freer, albeit uncertain. Ethan, she said softly, a faint flush coloring her cheeks as she realized his gaze. She tugged the robe around her. There's no delicate way to address these physical changes. He moved closer, keeping his voice low. Seris, you have nothing to be ashamed of. This is a side effect of the elixir, but it's not who you are. You're far more than just appearances. She offered a tiny smile, yet her eyes flicked downward in discomfort. Then why do I feel like an exhibit under constant scrutiny? People stare. I've caught even medical staff whispering about how improper I look. He gently took her hand, mindful of how new such a gesture must feel. The stares are about them, not you. They're seeing something they've never been allowed to acknowledge, vibrant, unfiltered feeling. She squeezed his fingers, a hesitant but deliberate motion. I requested to see you because the Council is forcing my hand. The purification will be scheduled unless I willingly submit to an evaluation. They want to see if the emotional changes are reversible. Ethan's throat constricted. We have a plan, Seris. Kale and I have found records proving the council has suppressed your family's emotions for centuries. We want to reveal the truth at your hearing, force them to concede your autonomy. But we need to make sure you're not taken away beforehand. A flicker of hope lit her eyes, followed by apprehension. My uncle, Lord Talvex, controls the hearing's agenda. He won't hesitate to silence me if he senses a threat to our social order. That's why we'll gather allies, Ethan insisted. There must be Varian reformists who can stand by you if the proof is overwhelming. She turned, glancing at her reflection in a polished wall panel. Her shoulders sagged slightly. You place great faith in a people who have lived for centuries under engineered stoicism. But I want to believe it's possible. Before he could reply, the door slid open. Commander Vex stood there, impatience etched on his features. Time is up, Mr. Voss. Ethan shot Seris a meaningful look, then followed Vex into the corridor. They walked in silence for a minute before Vex finally spoke, his voice taut. Whatever illusions you harbor of saving Lady Saras from her fate, let them go. The council's will is absolute. Ethan frowned, controlling his temper. I respect Varian authority, but Saras has the right to make her own decisions. Vex snorted, looking away. Decisions? She is a Vael, third in line to an ancient house. Her life is not her own. It belongs to the Varian people. They arrived at the base of a grand stairwell leading to the council's chambers. Vex stopped and turned, stepping close enough that Ethan could sense the controlled anger rolling off him. Be warned, Ethan Voss. Your presence here has already jeopardized Lady Saras's standing. Should you continue to meddle, you will face our full force. Despite the threat, Ethan felt a strange resolve settle in him. I have no intention of causing harm. I only want to ensure Lady Saras's well-being. If that challenges your traditions, perhaps it's your traditions that need reevaluation. Commander Vex's eyes flashed, but he said nothing more. He turned sharply and strode up the steps, leaving Ethan in the hall's half-light. Breath quickened. The encounter only steeled his resolve. They would not stop him from aiding Seris. He would find a way, even if it meant challenging centuries of Varian rule. That same night, Kale returned with an update. She pressed a small hollow disc into Ethan's palm. This contains a snippet of the genealogical records and a summary of the emotional suppression data. Enough to convince any open-minded Varian that their nobility's stoicism isn't natural. Ethan nodded, sliding the disc into a concealed pocket. Where can we find open-minded Varians? Kale's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. There's a small faction among the Academy's scholars who whisper of progressivism. They believe our society's rigidity is stifling our growth. If we show them the data, they might stand with us. Then let's do it, Ethan said. We gather them in secret, present the evidence, and hope they'll help us sway the hearing. Together, they slipped through lesser-used passageways beneath the Academy, seeking out these rumored reformists. In a forgotten lecture hall, they found a half-dozen Varian scholars huddled around an outdated projector. At the sight of Kale, the group stirred uneasily. Lady Kale Vael, one of the older scholars said, eyes flicking with curiosity. Why have you come here? And who is this human? Kale drew herself up. This is Ethan Voss, the scientist working alongside my sister, Seris Vael. We bring news of crucial importance regarding the Council's upcoming decision on Lady Saras. Another scholar, a tall, gangly Varian with pale eyes, cut in. We've heard Saras was taken ill by some experiment gone awry. The Council is pushing for purification. Yes, Kale confirmed. But it's more than just a medical mishap. We have evidence that for centuries, the Varian nobility has been genetically altered to suppress emotions. Lady Saras's current condition has undone that suppression, awakening a depth of feeling the Council deems dangerous. A ripple of murmurs spread through the group. Emotions, if carefully subdued, still flickered behind their eyes. Kale nodded at Ethan, who produced the hollow disc and inserted it into the projector. Lines of text and genomic diagrams illuminated the dim room. Gasps and exclamations echoed off the walls as the scholars absorbed the revelations. So it's true, breathed one of the younger Variants. I've long suspected something unnatural about our capacity for dispassion. The Council's strict codes, the genealogical secrecy, it's all here. Ethan leaned forward. We believe if we reveal these findings at Saras's hearing, It could force the council to allow her the choice to maintain her newfound emotional state. This might even pave the way for others who want to break free from forced stoicism. The older scholar stroked his chin, a pensive look in his eyes. We are but a handful, yet I cannot, in good conscience, support an institution built on concealed truths. If your evidence is sound, we will stand with you at the hearing. One by one, the others agreed, albeit with trembling voices. The risk was immense. Challenging the council's authority could cost them their positions, if not their freedom. Still, a spark of something long dormant flickered in their expressions, something akin to hope. Thank you, Kale said softly. Your support could be the turning point. They spent another hour strategizing, debating how best to present the evidence. After finalizing a plan, Kale and Ethan stepped back into the labyrinthine corridors. As they parted ways, Ethan couldn't help but marvel that in the heart of a cold, calculated society, seeds of rebellion could blossom in the unlikeliest of corners. On the morning before the hearing, Ethan was awakened by an urgent summons to Seris's suite. Panicking that something was amiss, he rushed through the academy's corridors. But when he arrived, he found Seris standing by the window, her silhouette framed by the purple sky. She looked vibrant, her posture tall, though an air of trepidation shimmered around her. What is it? He asked, stepping inside. She turned, and for the first time, Ethan noticed the intensity of her newly expressive eyes. They seemed brighter, as though lit by a hidden glow. I called you because I need to speak freely, while I still can. He moved closer. You're worried about tomorrow. Yes, she admitted, letting out a trembling exhale. My uncle presides over the hearing. He could easily rule that I am mentally compromised. Once that declaration is made, they can legally confine me to a facility and forcibly conduct the purification. Ethan gently placed his hands on her shoulders. We won't let that happen. We have allies, scholars who will testify, and Kale is gathering more support. We'll present the truth about Varian genetic suppression. Her lips parted, and for a second, Ethan thought she would dismiss him with her usual stoic facade. Instead, she blinked back tears and let her hands rest on his. You risk everything by standing at my side. If this fails, you may be exiled or imprisoned. Why do it? He swallowed hard, meeting her gaze. Because you're not just a project, Seris. You're someone I care about. And because this is bigger than us. A society that thrives on concealment cannot claim real progress. Her hands tightened around his. Then she did something that surprised him more than any scientific breakthrough ever could. She wrapped her arms around his torso, resting her cheek against his chest. The soft tremor in her body spoke of turmoil, but also trust. Gently, he returned the embrace, mindful of how startling physical closeness must feel for her now. In that wordless moment, they recognized the bond that had formed, a connection that transcended species and tradition. Through the accident that unleashed her emotions, Seris had discovered vulnerability and courage. Through working alongside her, Ethan had found a cause worth fighting for, and a woman whose brilliance left him in awe. The moment ended too soon. A discreet chime sounded, signaling an incoming communication. Seris parted from him, smoothing her robe, but a rosy hue lingered on her cheeks. She activated a nearby console, revealing Commander Vex's grim countenance. Lady Vael, the High Council has finalized the time of your hearing, he announced. You will present yourself tomorrow at dawn in the council hall. Attendance is mandatory. Seris gave a curt nod. I understand. Commander Vex's gaze shifted to Ethan, disapproval lacing his voice. Mr. Voss, you will also be present. The council wishes to hear your account of these events. Ethan kept his expression impassive. I will be there. The transmission ended, leaving the suite blanketed in tense quiet. Seris faced Ethan, hands twisting together. Dawn, then. Let us pray everything we've done will be enough. Ethan gently took her hands in his, stilling the nervous movement. It has to be. And tomorrow, whatever happens, we face it together. She looked at him with an intensity that made his heart flutter. Then she nodded, steeling herself with resolve. In the hush of that final night, as the twin suns of Varia Prime dipped below the horizon, they both prepared for a confrontation that would decide not only Seris's fate, but the future of an entire civilization. Dawn broke with an unearthly stillness. The lavender light of Varia Prime's twin suns filtered through the tall stained glass windows of the High Council Hall. Massive pillars shaped like twisting vines soared to the vaulted ceiling, casting intricate patterns across the marble floor. Rows of Varian citizens, each cloaked in hushed curiosity, filled the gallery. At the heart of the hall stood a semicircular dais where the council members sat in austere judgment. Ethan stood beside Seris, who wore formal Varian robes of dark blue. Kale hovered nearby, occasionally casting discreet glances to the side where the group of reformist scholars waited anxiously. Several guards flanked the entrance, their watchful eyes reflecting the charged atmosphere. A hush fell as Lord Talvex, cloaked in regal purple embroidered with gold, rose from his seat. His angular features were the epitome of Varian nobility, though his eyes held a stern glint that hinted at centuries of unchallenged authority. "The council convenes," Talvex declared. "We are gathered to evaluate the fitness of Lady Seris Vael, a noble of the Vael line, regarding her recent affliction." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Commander Vex stepped forward. "As the lead investigator, I present the incident. Lady Saras consumed a human-created elixir, leading to abnormal physical and emotional transformations. This has cast doubt upon her ability to serve as a rational leader." Talvex inclined his head. "Thank you, Commander. Now, Lady Saras, step forth. Are you prepared to explain these events?" Saras took a measured breath, stepping to the center of the chamber. Her shoulders squared, though Ethan noted the faint trembling in her hands. "Yes, my lord. I am here to speak truthfully." Talvex's gaze flicked to Ethan. "And you, human, Ethan Voss, will also answer the council's inquiries. Step forward." Ethan did so, aware of every eye locked on him. He fought the urge to fidget under the heavy stairs, focusing instead on Saras's presence at his side. Calm radiated from her, even if it was newly discovered and precarious. Talvex's voice echoed across the hall. "Lady Saras, we have reports of your emotional instability, your alleged fraternization with this outsider. Do you deny that your condition jeopardizes our traditions?" Saras hesitated, then took a breath that steadied her. "I do not deny I've changed, uncle. My emotional spectrum has expanded beyond what our society deems permissible. But I question whether that is truly a threat, or simply a reflection of what was always within us, suppressed by artificial means." The chamber erupted in muted gasps. Talvex's brow darkened. "Explain yourself." Saras stood taller. "I have discovered records, with the help of my sister Kale and Mr. Voss, showing that for centuries, the Varian nobility has undergone genetic manipulation to stifle emotions. Our Stoic legacy is not purely cultural, but enforced by design. Perhaps once it served a purpose, but now it stands as a cage." The hall fell into stunned silence. Talvex's lips pressed into a thin line. "You speak treason, niece. Our ancestry is sacred." A ripple of voices spread among the onlookers. Some wore expressions of shock or disbelief, while others looked intrigued. Sensing the pivotal moment, Ethan cleared his throat. "My lord, if I may," he said, stepping forward. "I bear proof. These documents, verified by several scholars, reveal the genealogical tampering carried out on the Vael line." He gestured to the group of reformist scholars, who promptly stepped forth. One of them, the older man with earnest eyes, held a data rod high. "Council, we have analyzed the data thoroughly. The genetic sequences indicate deliberate editing of emotional receptors in Varian nobility. This is undeniable." Talvex's face twisted with cold fury. "This is an outrage. You dare stand against tradition, sowing discord in the very seed of our power? We have been united for centuries under these principles." Kale quickly interjected. "United? Yes, but at what cost? Suppressing genuine emotion robs us of empathy and honest connection. Perhaps the time has come to allow those who wish to feel deeply the choice to do so." For a tense moment, it seemed the entire hall held its breath. Then, from among the seated council members, an older female Varian with silver hair spoke up. "Lord Talvex, if this evidence is accurate, then Lady Saras may be the harbinger of a new era. Should we not at least hear her perspective before condemning her?" Talvex shot her a seething glance, but did not immediately shut her down. Another council member chimed in. "Indeed, our society prides itself on progress. If we cling to tradition without examination, we risk stagnation. Ethan dared a hopeful glance at Saras, who nodded. She stepped forward again, voice carrying across the hall. I am not asking for a wholesale dismantling of everything Varian. Our achievements are immense. But we must acknowledge that forced emotional suppression might hinder compassion, creativity, and the deeper bonds that unite us, not just as variants, but as living beings. Talvex's hands tightened on the edges of the dais. You speak idealistically, niece. Emotions are volatile. They undermine discipline and rational governance. Seris met his gaze. Perhaps that is what we have always been taught. Yet I stand here, changed, feeling empathy and connectedness I never knew. I am still a capable scientist. My mind is clear, and I suspect many in this chamber are curious, even yearning to explore a fuller emotional range. A hush fell, broken only by the flicker of subdued murmurs among the assembly. Talvex's face was unreadable. Very well, Lady Saras, he said at last, each word measured. If indeed your intellect remains intact, we shall question you on your recent research. Should you demonstrate your capacity, we will consider leniency. Ethan recognized the ploy. Talvex intended to overwhelm Saras with technical queries, hoping to reveal instability. The council hammered her with questions about her regenerative research, gene sequences, and medical ethics. To Ethan's relief, Saras answered each with poise, drawing on their shared work. Despite the flush in her cheeks, her voice never faltered. Impressive, one council member finally admitted, leaning back in their seat. Her mind seems unclouded. Talvex, refusing to yield, pressed another line of attack. And what of your fraternization with this human, Ethan Voss? Is he not the true source of your corruption? Would you claim your feelings for him have no bearing on your judgment? Ethan's heart lurched. Saras turned to him, eyes brimming with an emotion that made her newly radiant beauty all the more striking. Then she addressed the council calmly. My feelings for Ethan are my own. They do not render me incompetent. In fact, they have opened my eyes to the compassion and synergy that can exist across species. Rather than corruption, this is a gift, enabling us to collaborate and innovate in ways we never imagined. Talvex's jaw tightened. This hearing is about your fitness to uphold Varian tradition. Saras shook her head. Let it be about my right to choose. If our traditions are so weak they cannot withstand scrutiny, then perhaps they deserve to be redefined. A flurry of hushed debate broke out among the council members. Some nodded grudgingly, while others wore grim masks of disapproval. Lord Talvex finally stood, his robes swirling around him. It seems we are at an impasse, he declared. The council must confer in private. Guards, escort Lady Saras and the human to the antechamber. Ethan felt the tug of two Varian guards on his arm, pulling him from the main hall. Saras, too, was guided out, though she cast him a reassuring look despite the nervous tension gripping them both. The massive doors sealed behind them, and the echo of heated voices reached their ears. This could be it, Saras whispered. Either they permit me to retain my emotions, or they cast me aside entirely. Ethan grasped her hand. Stay strong, Saras. The corridor stretched in stillness as the minutes ticked by like hours. At last, the doors opened, and a chamberlain beckoned them in. The council had returned to their seats, each wearing a carefully neutral expression. Lord Talvex's voice boomed. We have reached a decision regarding Lady Seris Vael. While some members insist upon purification, others see merit in allowing a controlled experiment of emotional autonomy. A murmur rose from the crowd, and Talvex raised a hand for silence. Thus, the council decrees, Lady Saras may, for the time being, retain her altered state, provided no threat arises to Varian order. Further, she must continue her research under supervision, to ascertain whether this emotional capacity proves beneficial or destructive. Cheers erupted from the small group of reformists. Kale exhaled in relief, a bright smile animating her face. Saras sagged with emotion, tears of gratitude glistening in her eyes. Ethan squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of tension lift, at least for the moment. Talvex's gaze slid to him. As for you, human, the council will permit your continued assistance, under strict observation. Be aware that any interference with Varian sovereignty will be severely punished. Ethan bowed his head slightly, relief coursing through his veins. I understand, my lord. Thank you. The formality concluded, and the hall erupted in a clamor of voices. Seris turned to Ethan, tears now openly streaming. We did it. I'm free for now. He gently pulled her into a brief embrace. That's all we need. A chance. We'll prove we can coexist, with emotions intact. In that charged moment, the entire chamber seemed to watch them. Whispers of scandal and awe intermingled, but Seris stood tall, her hand clasped with Ethan's, living proof that the old order could be challenged and, perhaps, transcended. In the aftermath of the council's decision, Seris's newfound emotional autonomy became a symbol of both curiosity and apprehension across Varia Prime. Some hailed it as the dawn of a more open, empathetic age. Others muttered darkly about the unraveling of tradition. Through it all, Seris continued her work with Ethan, determined to prove that her emotional freedom enhanced her intellect rather than hindered it. Though the council demanded she remain in the academy under observation, Seris was no longer a prisoner in her own body. She laughed, albeit shyly, at Ethan's jokes. She found joy in the small moments, like the brush of a warm breeze through the orchard near the lab or the sight of newly blossomed Varian flowers glowing in the twilight. Her physical transformation had leveled off, leaving her with softly pronounced curves that caught stares wherever she went, though not always unfriendly ones. At times, she blushed when passing a cluster of male scientists who seemed momentarily entranced by her altered figure. The attention was overwhelming, but she was learning to handle it with gentle humor and, occasionally, steely glances that reminded onlookers she was still a formidable scientist and a Vael. Amid the changing atmosphere, Ethan found his own life under the microscope. Guards followed him discreetly, logging his every movement, ensuring he posed no threat. He endured countless interviews with council-appointed monitors, each one probing his background and motivations. Yet, despite the surveillance, he never wavered. Seris needed his support. Moreover, he believed wholeheartedly in their cause, to show that emotion did not equate to chaos but to a fuller, richer existence. One evening, as they finished calibrating a new gene-splicing apparatus, Seris closed her data slate and turned to Ethan. She studied him for a silent moment, her expression thoughtful. I've been thinking a lot about us, she admitted softly. He felt his heart skip. What about us? A gentle smile touched her lips, and her eyes seemed alight with an inner glow. Humans have so many words for feelings, but we Varians lack them. Yet I sense an undeniable bond between us, one that goes beyond mere friendship or professional respect. My society might call it folly, but what do you call it? Swallowing, Ethan took a step closer, aware that every nuance of this moment might be recorded by the hidden watchers. Yet he didn't care. I'd call it love, he said, voice catching slightly. But only if you feel it too. Her gaze grew warm, a trembling softness filling her voice. I believe I do. I never had the freedom to feel anything so consuming, yet comforting. But now that I've tasted it, I can't imagine living without it. A surge of emotion welled up in him. He gently cupped her cheek, and she leaned into his touch, eyes fluttering shut. The tension of the past weeks coalesced into a single, tender instant. Slowly, he bent his head, and their lips met in a delicate, tentative kiss. In that moment, a faint luminescent shimmer pulsed along Seris's skin. Surprised, she pulled back, her eyes wide. What was that? Ethan blinked, equally startled. I'm not sure. Some side effect of the elixir mixed with your Varian biology, maybe? A form of bioluminescent emotional release. She let out a soft laugh, pressing a hand over her heart. Varian tradition states that certain strong emotions can trigger dormant traits in our physiology. It appears that even our genetic lines have hidden wonders we've never fully explored. Ethan grinned. Well, it's beautiful, like you. A rosy glow spread across her cheeks. You have such a disarming way with words. Just then, the lab door hissed open. Kale stood there, eyes flicking between them with amused exasperation. I hate to interrupt, but you might want to know there are half a dozen monitors outside who just saw a bright flash through the observation window. Seris's face reddened further. Kale lifted a hand. Spare me the explanation. The entire academy will be talking about it soon enough. But this display might not be a bad thing. It shows the unpredictability and wonder of what real emotion can do for us. Ethan and Seris exchanged a determined glance. Regardless of who watched or what gossip spread, their union had become a living testament to the possibility of a new Varian society, one where emotions were embraced rather than suppressed. A glimmer of hope sparked in Ethan's chest, a sense that they were truly on the threshold of monumental change. In the days that followed, news of Seris's bioluminescent kiss spread like wildfire across Varia Prime. While some criticized the undignified display, many younger Varians, already intrigued by Seris's transformation, seized upon it as a symbol of liberation. The Academy's reformist faction found fresh energy. Forums filled with heated debate about whether centuries of stoicism should be upheld or whether the Vael's experience pointed to a brighter future. The High Council, caught in an unprecedented wave of public discourse, convened another assembly to address the rising sentiment. Lord Talvex, his authority tested but not diminished, presided with a sober mien. This time, Seris and Ethan were not hauled in as defendants but invited as key voices in the discussion. The Grand Council Hall was packed. Live-stream technology broadcast proceedings to the far reaches of the planet. Talvex stood and cleared his throat. We gather today, not to judge Lady Saras, but to reflect on our society's response to her unique condition. A breath of tension rippled through the crowd. Seris stepped forward, wearing regal attire that accentuated her noble bearing. She spoke, voice steady but impassioned. We have reached a crossroads, my people. Our traditions, though they served us well in times past, now risk stifling the very essence of life, feeling. Emotions need not be the enemy of logic. They can coexist, strengthening our resolve, fostering empathy, and igniting creativity. An elderly scholar rose from the reformist section. My research into Varian history reveals that before our gene editing programs, we were an expressive race. We sang songs. We wrote poetry imbued with deep sentiment. And we achieved unity not through fear, but understanding. Another wave of murmurs followed. Seris continued, I do not advocate chaos or impulsivity, but let each Varian decide whether to embrace these emotions. Let us provide the choice to reverse the genetic suppression for those who wish it. I stand before you as living proof that emotional awakening does not equate to incompetence. Lord Talvex's expression was rigid. And how do you propose we maintain societal stability if Varians begin altering themselves en masse? Ethan stepped forward. By creating a framework for voluntary emotional release. The same research we used in regenerative medicine can guide safe, controlled transformation. Not everyone will choose it, of course, but those who do can lead us into new frontiers. An electric hush descended on the hall. For several heartbeats, no one spoke. Then an unexpected voice broke the silence. It was Commander Vex. He stepped away from the dais, removing his officer's cap in a gesture of humility. All my life, I have upheld the Council's decrees without question, he said, his deep voice resonating. I was taught that unwavering discipline was the highest virtue. But in recent weeks, I've seen Lady Saras maintain her brilliance despite her emotional awakening. I've witnessed Mr. Voss's commitment to our people's well-being. And I find myself wondering if, in our pursuit of order, we have overlooked a fundamental aspect of existence. Shocked whispers spread throughout the chamber. Commander Vex, the staunch traditionalist, was expressing doubt. Vex bowed his head toward Seris. I cannot deny what I've seen. Perhaps it is time we adapt, lest we allow fear to rob us of growth. I yield to the wisdom of a balanced future, one where logic and feeling coexist. Lord Talvex's face flickered with conflicting emotions, outrage, frustration, perhaps even a glimmer of reluctant respect. The wave of momentum in the hall was undeniable. Council members whispered urgently among themselves. Some scowled, others nodded thoughtfully. Finally, Talvex raised his hands for silence. It seems the Council must concede to the will of the people, guided by the revelations we cannot refute. As of this day, we will allow citizens to pursue emotional autonomy if they so choose, under regulated circumstances to ensure public safety. A roar of applause and relief swept through the chamber. Seris closed her eyes, tears of gratitude rolling down her cheeks. Kale rushed to her side, and they shared a fierce embrace. Ethan gripped Seris's hand, heart near bursting with triumph. Talvex's gaze fell upon Ethan. As for you, Human, he said, voice still tinged with paternalistic sternness. We will tolerate your continued presence, provided you respect our laws. Be mindful that acceptance is not a blank check for disorder. Ethan bowed. Understood, my lord. My intention has always been to collaborate in peace. With that, the meeting adjourned, and a surge of Varian citizens spilled into the hall's promenade, buzzing with fervent talk of the new decree. Reformist scholars embraced, weeping openly in an emotional display unimaginable just weeks ago. Even the stoic old guard appeared shaken, if not entirely opposed. In the midst of the tumult, Seris pulled Ethan into a quiet alcove. Her luminous eyes shone with an intensity he had come to cherish. We did it, she whispered. We changed the course of Varian history. He cradled her face in his hands, smiling at the wonder he saw there. You did it, Seris. I was just the accidental catalyst. She laughed, a warm, musical sound rarely heard on Varia Prime. Sometimes an accident leads to the greatest transformations, and I choose to keep transforming as long as I can do it at your side. Drawing closer, she pressed her lips to his in a tender kiss that once again lit her skin in a soft, radiant glow. Nearby onlookers gasped, but this time, the hush of awe carried no condemnation, only marvel at the dawn of a new era. Ethan rested his forehead against hers, overwhelmed with joy. Outside the hall, the twin suns cast their lavender light upon a planet now stirred by the promise of emotional freedom. A deep sense of peace settled over him. The path ahead would not be without challenges. Societal shifts never happened overnight. But they had won a chance to guide Varia Prime toward a richer, more empathetic future, hand in hand. They lingered in that alcove, cherishing the moment that embodied their shared triumph, their unspoken vows, and the love that bound them across species and traditions. At last, Seris pulled back, cheeks glowing with that enchanting blush. Shall we greet our new world? He nodded. Yes, my Lady Vael, he teased, and she swatted his arm playfully. Arm in arm, they stepped into the bright corridor where Kale, the reformists, and curious citizens waited. Applause broke out in spontaneous waves, and 1,000 voices melded in a cacophony of hope. It was more than a personal victory. It was the birth of possibilities once buried under centuries of genetic control. From that day forward, Varia Prime would be forever changed, guided by a woman who had tasted forbidden emotion and refused to relinquish it, and by the human who dared to stand at her side. And though the challenges ahead were innumerable, so too were the wonders that could blossom in a society that chose to feel deeply, to love boldly, and to celebrate the radiant tapestry of life in all its forms. In the following months, as the planet adjusted to the new policies, Seris's pioneering efforts in regenerative medicine flourished. The once controversial human growth elixir was refined into a safe, regulated treatment. Some Varians, emboldened by Seris's example, opted to unlock their dormant emotional spectrums. Families and communities began to explore connections once deemed taboo, forging deeper bonds. And as for Seris and Ethan, their bond grew stronger each day. In a solemn yet joyful ceremony blending both Varian and human customs, they exchanged vows of unity, a union witnessed by the entire academy. Commander Vex, newly open to change, offered a respectful salute, while Lord Talvex observed from a distance, grim but oddly pensive. In the soft glow of Varia Prime's perpetual twilight, Seris's eyes still held that secret luminescence whenever their gazes locked. With each shared smile, with every tender touch, they proved that an accidental elixir, a world turned upside down, and a surge of forbidden emotion could lead to something more wondrous than anyone had dared to dream. A future where the heart and mind danced in unity, casting a light that shone across the stars.